Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Very happy to see the room full at 10 in the morning. That is a great thing and not normal. Probably tomorrow after a hangover, it's going to be a little different. So I was jumping in to give a keynote, the opening keynote today. And I think there's one topic right now in Web3 that is super exciting. That is actually not Web3, and it's AI. So what I've been working on the last year and thinking about is how is Web3 and AI converging? And I think it's one very obvious topic and area, which is DAO and decentralization, that has been one of the big narratives in the Web3 space for a very long time. So I'm Felix, I'm the co-founder of Dash Next and Futerio, which is a venture builder, as we just heard. Dash Next is within the Dash network, basically the Asian part. So we started off building payment systems all around Asia. And the special thing with Dash is that it was the first DAO in the world. So what is a DAO? A DAO is one of the early concepts in the crypto space. And it's basically the idea that you can run an organization purely based on code. So it's the idea that you run a whole company without people involved by just putting code in the internet that is running. And Dash has been basically the first project that pulled that off. They put this code in the internet, so we kind of printed money, you could say easily, every 40 seconds to 2 minutes, every time a block is created. There was a little dash that is created in the internet, and that was put into a treasury, and then people could ask for that money, and this is basically what you see here. So you have the DAO in the middle, and then contractors can put proposals into a DAO. In the Dash ecosystems, it looked a little bit like that. Every month, there was a voting from the decision makers, which is in the Dash case were masternodes. And once they voted for your proposal, the money was paid out automatically, and we could run our operations to then again build ecosystems, payment ecosystems all around Asia, onboarding merchants, onboarding payment service providers, payment gateways, and so on. So that was a very exciting time. Yet, I guess the idea of having this fully autonomous organization that basically does not need people anymore, it was not really possible in 2014. So that was the start where you somewhat had the treasury and the funding automated, but then yet still you need people to run these operations. And this is what I want to talk about today. Like, how are we evolving now corporations that really don't need people anymore, that are purely run by AI in combination with the Web3 tech stack. Obviously, it was not only the Dash DAO that we saw coming up. I mean, as time went by, there's more and more DAOs that are still there today. There are pretty big treasuries, actually. The Maker DAO is one famous example. The Uniswap DAO, I think at one point they had like $15 billion in their treasury to do whatever they want, essentially, and whatever the community was proposing to do with that funds. The way it usually works in these Web3 DAOs is that people that are stakeholders within these DAOs are putting up proposals, asking for money, and then there is a certain mechanism of saying, yes, we grant the money, or no, we don't grant the money. Sadly, don't have the time to go into what kind of fun things people did with that, but especially the Uniswap DAO, I think, is a very cool DAO to watch, or to look what they did with their funding and their treasury. One of the major differences between DAOs and like the really old world, which is like the corporate world, the Web2 world, is that we imagined these DAOs as being these open organizations, right? Whereas in a normal organization, you cannot just get in, you have to go through HR, you have to write an application, you have to see if you get the job, you have to talk to people and so on. A DAO is basically this thing in the internet, it's a web board where just by participation you can be a member of that DAO. So usually it's a combination between I want to do something for it, I'm writing actively in web boards, and I'm a token holder, so I have the right of making decisions. So in that sense, DAOs are really more bottom up than organizations that are kind of top down. It's a grassroots thing. That's how we imagined it. It's like fully transparent. you have the governance that is laid out in the internet, you can see what it's all about. But then again, we had this dream that DAOs don't need people anymore, but it turns out actually there's a lot of people involved, there's a lot of voting involved, there's a lot of requirements involved for people to participate so a DAO works. And I think that was one of the downfalls, and still is one of the big downfalls in this Web3 DAO world, that if you rely on people voting on things, like decisions on proposals, it's always a bit difficult because these people sometimes don't vote, right? It's like in political systems where you see sometimes only 20 or 30% voters that are going to the elections. And in that sense, DAOs sometimes fall short on the decision-making part. So something big happened this year, and I can really say I lost my sleep in all this, and since I saw this. When AI came up, shortly after ChatGPT came up, people started to say, hey, can I actually use ChatGPT to make money for me? And they did. They asked ChatGPT, and I think everybody knows about this by now, to say, hey, if I give you $100, what can you do with it? And then there is an evolution. I mean, the AI evolution is like Web3 on steroids. The speed in which people are releasing cool code and cool projects is just like insane right now. So we basically came from ChatGPT to AutoGPT, which is kind of the evolution from question and asking to giving a task and expecting the AI comes back with a finished result. So people started that, and with that, kind of this idea was born to say, hey, can actually an AI work for me while I'm not working? And I think this is a big narrative that is still evolving, and a lot of things are coming out right now. What I just said is kind of key to say we have this evolution from question and answer to a chatbot to basically an agent-based approach where you have this AI that is somewhat an autonomous entity and that is really able to do tasks for me, right? I just said the evolution is insane. This graphic stops in August 23, and since then actually a lot of things happened. A few notable things are there's different frameworks, there's different agents, Agent GPT, Baby AGI, the Llama model is just a few to mention here. Feel free to ping me later, happy to share more info on kind of what has come out in the last month. I think generally if you think about the design of such an agent, the technical design and the business idea that is based on that is what is actually you need, right? Maybe you have heard about the GPTs that were released, I think 6 or 8 weeks ago from OpenAI, where you can essentially train a chatbot to become a certain character. So you can tell the chatbot, hey, I want you to be an SEO manager, I want you to be a marketing manager, I want you to be a CEO of a company. So one element of that is giving these AIs a profile to say this is the character you play, and based on this, you should act in a certain way. The other part that is very important is that they have memory, meaning they can remember what they did before and reference to their actions in the past. The third element obviously is the planning element. So if you give it a task, the AI comes back, makes a plan, and then number 4, executes this plan for you. It becomes really fun if you think kind of from a design and technical implementation perspective, what these agents actually can do. Obviously, if you can use ChatGPT, you can already do a lot because ChatGPT is trained on information on the internet. But then we all know that ChatGPT was limited by information that is not up to date, right? So I think right now they went to April, before it was like 2 years old information. So obviously people came up with new plugins and API connections that allowed these agents to tap into other resources. One was saying we have a plugin to an API to Google, so we can go and get real-time information from Google. But this same principle goes for everything. You can, with API connections, connect your emails, connect your drives, connect every kind of software there is that has an API. It can be even flight data with Amadeus flight servers, or Slack, or what we see here, Notion or Outlook or whatever. So basically this allows you to build an agent that really can access to all kinds of different third-party software. So once you understood these few elements that I just described, it's actually a very easy step to then go and say, okay, now we want to build employees or agents that are really specific for a certain role. So what it means actually is now you can build these companies to say, I need certain roles of my companies, and I can build these with different agents. So here's one example of Peter, the data analyst. It has web access, it has personality, it's trained on certain data, and so on and so on. You can do social media agents. You can do essentially whatever you want, right? You can do a CEO, a CMO, whatever you fancy and whatever you imagine. And again, it always comes back to the same principle, having these planning, execution, memory functions, and then adding APIs that enable the agent to do what it needs to do. But also this is just the beginning. Now we're already on the next step in this evolution, which is to say now, okay, we have these single agents. What if and how can we put these agents together? So this is where the concept of agent swarms, or we're basically born, which is like, how can you actually put a lot of agents together that work in some way together to really achieve something complex, like having this fully autonomous organization. So it's very much in the making. This is all pretty new and hot stuff. It's really hard to follow up because there's so much coming out of that, but this is just one concept I'm showing here, where essentially you have manager agents that are controlling other agents working together. You have Oracle agents where these agents can pull information from. Imagine like stock market prices or freight data or whatever you have. You have certain signals that they go to. You have these LLMs that are trained on closed or open source information, where they can kind of have their language processing. They have different memory modules, and so on and so on. But what does that mean? So let's break it down to kind of actual use cases. I think one big use case that many people are thinking about right now is these use cases of content creation that become like famous influencers. We're seeing a lot of this artificial influencers popping up right now. So if you think about it, you could theoretically put these forms together and say, let's run a YouTube channel autonomously. Let's run a TikTok channel autonomously. And if you dig into the details, like how does that actually look like, you will see there needs to be an agent that is identifying topics, that is creating the content, another agent that is acting as the editor-in-chief to approve the content, then there is somebody to distribute this content, to analyze the content, to go in and comment or react to the comments of the people, and so on, right? So in some way it's very complex, and also not, because we have a reference into the real world, and everybody who was working in marketing, I think, can find himself there, of just thinking about what is actually the workflow that I require to do my marketing up to this point. And the same principle basically is true for every other department. There's one thing called chat dev, which I highly recommend you to check out. It's a very funny or very fun project that is basically about running your virtual development agency or your virtual development department. So what they did is kind of put all characters together that you need to develop and deploy new code or new projects. And they kind of made it in a very funny way, because it's very abstract. It's all on the console right now, so it's like it's hard to grasp for non-tech users at this point, because there is no front end. So these guys kind of now started their front end, which is kind of a department that you can see like a 2D computer game, and you can see them chatting with each other in different roles. So the CTO is talking to the back-end developer and to the front-end developer, and then there's a discussion going on. And you could imagine it somewhat like that. There is this agent in your monitor, and you can observe these agents working for you and say, hey, I have a great idea. So what is the idea? I just found the way to solve our company and to increase sales. So, and here the story goes. So it's really fun to see these projects. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there. I can highly suggest you dig into those. So now let me give 2 more examples. I'm almost done, and come kind of to the point where Web3 becomes important. I think you can use that same principle for everything. This is an example also from some guy on YouTube who did a flight agent, connecting an agent to Amadeus servers, creating a group chat, letting different agents work together. So in this case, I can enter saying, hey, I'm looking for a flight from Berlin to New York, business class in January, find me the best price in the whole month. And then these agents go out, talk to each other, and scrape the Amadeus servers to come back with a flight, which obviously, if you listen to my example, is a bit different than using just the classical chat engine. Another thing that we are seeing popping up massively right now is these virtual influencers. Girls or boys, mostly girls, that look very real, but that are not real. They have their fan shops, they have their brand deals. Many of them have their OnlyFans page, and that's becoming really, really big. But until now, most of them are just this face, and behind them is a team of humans. So I think, and for me, there's actually no question that this is going to change within the next month, latest in the next year, that these influencers become fully autonomous, and we don't need people anymore, right? You can have this influencer that is doing their own pictures, that's doing their own campaigns. So it's already there, it's already possible. It's just a matter of time until people put it together. So now, one last word where actually Web3 comes into all of that. Think about the graphic I showed you with the APIs. For me, this is the obvious answer. So number one, there's obviously a lot of use cases for these agents in Web3. Imagine about marketing, community management, fundraising, trading. I think this is already happening. People are already moving into that and building their systems. We're just setting up a few for a few projects, finding KOLs, pinging KOLs, and so on. But there's another element of building these agents in a decentralized way. Obviously, Web3 is always, or has always been strong in kind of giving you a tech stack that you can just plug in without asking for people, without paying subscriptions. Take Chainlink, for example, as a price oracle, where you have to pay that, but you can use price data in a decentralized manner without having to worry about the truth of this data. It goes for stock market prices, weather data, gambling data, sports results, anything basically you want. It becomes very strong once you connect these agents to wallets, because right now, this is one problem. An agent has probably a hard time getting a KYC in a bank, but they don't need that if they have a MetaMask wallet, right? So you just give him a wallet, and now he goes off and pays for whatever, and you connect him to some exchanges, and there you go. And another thing that has already started a long time ago, and I gotta admit I didn't get it back in 2017, what these people from Ocean were doing really, which is data markets. That is all about training data, giving LLMs the right data, and so on. And then last but not least, and this is one thing we are working on strongly right now, is not only building these agents, but then tokenizing these agents, because this, in my opinion, is one of the main things from Web3 to be still strong. You can fundraise in a very different way, and you can give your equity or your shares, I don't call it like that, but essentially that's what it is. You can kind of allow people to buy into your project by holding your token and by buying your token. And in that way, you can tokenize your agents, you can open them to the market without the need to only sell equity to investors. So that's it. I hope you find this as exciting as me. I'm here to answer your questions and happy to do something together. If you're interested, we have a AI company that is building for enterprises and for startup projects. So we have several teams that we can deploy into building this cool stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mago.
Thanks.